4, 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
You're very close with the president. I mean, how does he feel about this?
He's very, very concerned, obviously.
Is he frustrated by the inability to?
Well, sure he's frustrated, of course. I think everyone involved is frustrated, but you can't let your frustration get in the way of trying to be a constructive player here, and that's what he's determined to do.
All right, Valerie Jarrett on the Sunday show on CBS talking about Israel and the inability to reach a ceasefire. Well, it's CNN reporting that a ceasefire agreement has been reached. The parties, with the exception of Israel, went to Egypt. And according to Mark Regev, speaking earlier on CNN, it's the same exact ceasefire proposal that Israel agreed to 3 weeks ago that Hamas had said no to, that has now been agreed to. So all that dying for 3 weeks might have been prevented had Hamas just agreed to it 3 weeks earlier. Let's welcome in Hank Sheinkopf and Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. And let me start with you, Hank. We've heard some very harsh rhetoric from this administration, from the State Department today. The State Department, in fact, saying that they were appalled by Israel and that Israel had to work harder to live up to its own standards when it came to civilians. Do you sense any, any anti-Semitism in this administration?
It's what I call the British view of life. If you blow up the King David Hotel and throw people out of your country, create independence, they're never going to forgive you for it. I.e., if you throw people out of your country when John Kerry and say we're striving for independence, which is we can protect ourselves, they're never going to forgive you for it. It's the same principle.
All right, is that a yes or a no?
Oh, please. This is an awful, awful State Department whose incompetence at securing an agreement with Iran of any kind directly results in the problem with Hamas and Hezbollah. It's really a simple problem.
And Ford, weigh in on this.
I actually have to agree with Hank. I mean, this is an incompetent State Department that has unrealistic expectations and has handled this thing very poorly. Hamas is running a very, very successful PR campaign, and much of this could have been avoided if President Obama had gotten out there and basically said, look, as long as Hamas hides behind innocent civilians and stores its weapons among the innocent, civilians are going to die. Unfortunately, it's sad. It shouldn't happen, but Hamas is a terror organization bent on the destruction of Israel and not concerned about peace. And frankly, we have to back Israel to the hilt, and they tried to play both sides of the fence and have the cake and eat it too. And as a result, this is where we are.
I agree. My Republican colleague, thank you for agreeing with me. I'm grateful. It's worse than that. Had they not permitted Barack Obama and John Kerry, Iran, to get away with continuing to use cyclotrons to create more nuclear material for obviously what will be a bomb, this would not be occurring because Hamas is an ally of Iran and funded by them. It's very simple. Proxy, war by proxy.
Well, Hank, you make a good point, and that is the fact that weak leadership elsewhere in the world has allowed Hamas to get away with this, and basically the Palestinian government doesn't want to hold Hamas accountable. No, neither does anyone else. And yes, you're right. Overall, in a macro perspective, this is because of President Obama's weak leadership around the world.
And when Barack Obama says on Friday that he has a problem reconciling Israel's right to defend itself with the Palestinian deaths, what message does that send, Ford?
That sends a terrible message to Israel, our best ally in the region. And it sends a message to everyone else around the world as one of our allies. If you want the U.S. to stick up for you, it isn't going to happen. President Obama is more concerned about how he thinks the world should be and not how the world currently is. Hamas is a terrorist organization bent on the destruction of Israel and the murder of Jews. And frankly, we have to back Israel to the hilt. And he hasn't been sending the right message.
All right, and Hank?
Listen, I'm been pretty public about this. I think the president has been an incompetent leader internationally. I think if you want to look at who's responsible for the Ukraine, the crisis today, it's Barack Obama by not standing up for the Ukraine and not standing up for Poland. It's very simple. If you're going to be weak in bad neighborhoods, people will take advantage of you. Barack Obama doesn't understand a very simple thing. We all live in a bad neighborhood, and every once in a while, bullies have to be told to get into their place.
I want to ask both of you a question, and Ford, you could weigh in on this first. Let's listen to Joe Scarborough. This is Scarborough last week just raking Israel over the coals. I want you to listen.
I'm sorry, this is asinine. This continued killing of women and children in a way that appears to be indiscriminate is asinine. It is bad. Of course, it's tragic for the Palestinian people. It is bad for the Israeli people. I mean, we will rue the day that this is happening every day and women and children are being seen, because you know what? As much as we all hate Hamas, what is going to replace Hamas is going to be much worse.
He then went on to say that instead of people who just want power, which is how he identified Hamas, you might get an Islamic terrorist group there. And I'm like, what? So Alan Dershowitz was on this show. We played that. We also played Mika the day before, mistakenly or otherwise, saying, we'll be right back with more of Morning Jew. And then she said, Joe. So she corrected herself. And Alan had a problem with all of that. So I tweeted it out. Joe didn't like it. Joe said I selectively stopped the tape where I stopped it, as you just saw. But I protected him, as it turned out, from him describing Hamas incorrectly. Now he's doubled down. Not only has he attacked the people who have questioned him, today he's attacked Israel for expecting a blank check from the United States. Ford, what's going on with this conservative Joe Scarborough?
Well, I have great respect for Joe Scarborough, but I have to completely disagree with him on this. He is being completely impractical, and his head is somewhere in the clouds. I don't know what's going on with the guy. I don't understand why he's falling prey to the same nonsense that much of the Western media is. The bottom line is Israel has a right to defend itself. It's our best ally. And frankly, let me tell you something. When Hamas is done with trying to destroy Israel, Christians are going to be next, and so is much of the United States. And at the end of the day, we have to back our staunchest ally to the hilt. And for Joe Scarborough to go out there, particularly on a liberal network, and just spout off like that shows me the power of the microphone and Joe Scarborough not understanding the practical situation on the ground.
And Hank?
Barack Obama will be responsible, should it occur, for Iranian submarines off the east coast of the United States with nuclear weapons to destroy this country and to kill all the Christians that they can get their hands on. If someone believes what's happening in Mosul is different than anything that's happening anyplace else in the Middle East, they're wrong. The only country that allows Christians their freedom to worship as they wish is, guess who? Israel. Bang it all day long if you want. It's nothing more than anti-Semitism, and it's anti-religiosity worse.
What's nothing more than anti-Semitism?
This kind of attacking of Israel.
What Scarborough said specifically?
What Scarborough said specifically. What Mika Brzezinski, come on, give me a break. What the press is doing overall, attacking Israel. Would the Israelis like not to kill civilians? You bet. Would that the other side had the same set of values and behaviors. They don't.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to something else, which is pretty crazy. We just heard a report earlier that there's a man being tested for Ebola right here in New York City at Mount Sinai Hospital. He's in an isolation. He came in with a very high fever. He had been to one of these African countries where Ebola is present. And we are doing nothing. In fact, the two doctors who we brought in, they're U.S. doctors. I understand that to an extent, although I'm not 100% behind that, I got to tell you, because I've heard too many people say that there's a danger there too. But I'll read you a story right here. The United Arab Emirates suspend Guinea flights over Ebola. When is the United States of America going to do something like suspend flights? We were quick to put an FAA ban on flights to Israel. I'm saying maybe it's a little apples and oranges, but is there not a concern for it that we could be infected with someone with the Ebola virus? That whole plane will be infected. People in the hospital will be infected. And here we go.
There absolutely should be a concern. I don't know what this administration's doing. And forget just FAA flights. You could have them coming up through the border as well. And this is something, the problem with the American public and this president's leadership is he doesn't want to address potential problems. He only wants to address it once it's already become a ridiculous crisis, and then show no leadership by saying, well, I can't do anything. I mean, that's the whole point here. This is where actually Hank and I agree. It's not just his lack of leadership on international issues. It's his lack of leadership on domestic issues. And given the way that as awful as Ebola is, apparently spreading, based on news reports, this is an epidemic that all Americans should be rightly concerned about.
What about it, Hank? Should we ban these flights or look into it?
I don't know the answer. This is not of my...
No, but neither am I. I'm not a doctor. Ford's not a doctor.
I would be very concerned about these kinds of diseases entering the United States. We quarantine animals, we quarantine vegetables, we quarantine produce. We do it all the time when you travel in, even from Puerto Rico. Your produce is checked, your animals are checked. I mean, we're very careful about this stuff. This could be a major epidemic, but we don't want to scare people. Should we be trying to treat people if we have the facilities to quarantine them? The answer is probably yes. Should we be keeping other people out who don't have to be here? You bet. We have responsibility to our citizens first.
All right, one more, and Hank, let me start with you. Go ahead, Ford. Go ahead, Ford.
We need to be proactive because we don't honestly understand the scope of the Ebola outbreak, and we need to be compassionate, but we also need to be realistic and be protecting American citizens against a possible outbreak. I'm not saying go scare everyone. I'm saying let's be honest and practical about this.
You would think a disease with no cure that kills 60% of people, you would think that we would be proactive and be a little careful. 30 seconds each. Ford, do you believe Obama's going to sign this executive order on immigration, and what's it going to mean?
I believe that President Obama wants the Republicans to try to impeach him. And let me tell you something, impeaching President Obama, which is what he may do, he's got a range of options. I don't know which one he's going to pick, but he's got a range of options. And if Republicans impeach him, it'll be the worst idea since New Coke. And essentially, they will not only lose the Senate in 2014, they'll give up the presidency in 2016 and potentially wind up finding themselves in the wilderness beyond that. This is bad politics.
Okay, but they're not going to impeach him. Ford, I got to give Hank a shot because we got 30 seconds. Go ahead, Hank.
Yes, he will. And what will occur? The Republicans will, if they're smart, sit on their hands. If not, they're going to lose the best shot they've had of taking both chambers since 1994.
All right, gentlemen, it was fun. I thank you both, Hank Sheinkopf and Ford O'Connell. We'll speak to you both again very, very soon. All right, folks, when we come back, it's going to be columnist Ruben Navarrete Jr., and he has a lot to say on whether or not the president will, in fact, ever issue that executive order. We'll turn to him, get his viewpoint, all that straight ahead next on the Steve Malzberg Show, only on Newsmax Television. Don't go away.